Welcome to our last Virginia Studies unit, Virginia Today. In Unit 9, we will be looking at 3 big ideas for Virginia during the early 2000s. First, we're going to look at Virginia's growth in various areas. Then we're going to be looking at our products and industries and how those have changed. And lastly, we are going to be looking at what Virginia's 3 branches of government are and how those work. So let's take a look at our goals for this unit. By the end of this unit and this lesson, you should be able to identify the 3 branches of Virginia government and the function of each. You should be able to describe the major products and industries of Virginia's 5 geographic regions. And lastly, you should be able to explain how advances in transportation, communications, and technology have contributed to Virginia's prosperity and role in the global economy. So let's dive right in with Virginia's growing economy. At the start of the new millennium, which was the year 2000, cities across America were booming. We had skyscrapers and sleek office buildings in our big cities, modern jets and planes flew in the sky, and computer technology was developing faster than we could keep up. These are all really good things because Virginia's economy is largely dependent on the manufacture and sale of its major products. These include tobacco, coal, poultry, and military ships, which are sold in markets around the world. During this time period, Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads are becoming major technology centers within Virginia and the United States as a whole. It is often called the Internet capital of the world. Since the first computers were invented in the 1930s, innovations have allowed them to do more in smaller packaging. Most of these changes have occurred in the last 20 years. If you can believe it, the first computer took up an entire wall. It was not meant for personal use. Then we began to see personal computers that were meant for in-home use that are like the top picture on your screen. And now we have computers in our phones and in our iPads and other small devices. So just think about how far we've gone in the last 100 years. Next, let's look right here at home at our shipbuilding industry. Newport News, right here in Hampton Roads, is home to the largest non-military shipyard in the world. At Newport News Shipbuilding, you will find many ships being built for commercial purposes. Virginia is also home to the U.S. Navy's Atlantic Fleet. Successful industries are not just in the coastal plain and Piedmont region. Virginia, in fact, is one of the most productive states in the United States, with each region specializing in different products. Let's take a look at what those are. Beginning in Southwest Virginia, in the Appalachian Plateau region, the major product is coal, and the industry is coal mining. Next, in the Valley and Ridge region, you will find farming is the major industry where they cultivate poultry, which is chicken and turkey, apples, dairy, and beef. You'll find that in the Blue Ridge Mountain region, many people and families travel for recreation. This could be hiking, camping, whitewater rafting, and so much more. Another major industry of the region is farming, with apples and other fruits being the major products of that farming. Moving into the Piedmont region, federal and state government, farming, and horses are the major industries. This is the area where you will find Washington, D.C., which is why our federal government is located in the region. Major products include tobacco, information technology, and textiles. Lastly, right here in Hampton Roads, shipbuilding, tourism, and military installments are our largest industries. Ships, seafood, and peanuts are our major products. So to recap, let's look at Virginia's top 5 products and services. First, we have architectural and engineering services, which is building design, banking and lending, computer programming, that's that information technology, food products from our farming, and lastly, shipbuilding at places like Newport News Shipbuilding and Norfolk Naval Shipyard. Over time, the most profitable crops in Virginia have shifted. For most of our history and what we've studied so far this year, tobacco was the biggest cash crop, followed closely by cotton. However, today, livestock are the most profitable and are sold in markets across the globe. All right, let's look at our government. Our founding fathers wanted the government to run smoothly without any one person or group having too much power. If you think back to the American Revolution and the causes of that war, our founding fathers felt that the king and parliament in England had too much power over them. And so when they were developing Virginia's government and when they were developing the United States government, that was forefront in their minds. They were trying to prevent what they saw as problems from England from occurring in the United States. So you can think of our government as a three-legged stool. If you remove one leg, it will fall over. This is a really good analogy for our government because we have what are called checks and balances. So each branch has necessary powers to help our government run, but without the other branches, if one of the other branches weren't to do their jobs, then our government wouldn't function. So we need all three of those branches. So like I said, each branch has different responsibilities and they keep each other in check. So some of their responsibilities are oversight for the other branches. So let's take a look at the illustration on the left. At the top of the tree, you will find the executive branch. This branch oversees the entire government. They are the head of state. At the federal level, that's the President of the United States. Here in Virginia, that's our governor. In Virginia Beach, we have an executive branch as well at the city level, and that's our mayor. Each of these people is responsible for enforcing the law. So when we look at enforcing the law, that is saying that we're making sure that the law is being carried out. So who else might be a part of the executive branch? One other group that's part of the executive branch is the police force. They are under the direction of that head of state, and they're responsible for enforcing laws. Next, let's look at the legislative branch. Those are senators and representatives. And they have the same names at the national and state level. Okay? And then at the city level, they are the city council. All of these people are elected by the citizens, and they are responsible for making or writing the laws. They can also amend old laws. The last branch is the judicial branch. These are our judges. Their responsibility is to decide if laws are fair, equal, and constitutional. That should sound familiar when we studied the Supreme Court and their decisions during the Civil Rights Movement. During that time, the Supreme Court of the United States determined that several laws were not constitutional. That was them having their oversight over the legislative branch who wrote those laws. So once they decided that the laws were unconstitutional, the legislative branch had to change them. See? Checks and balances. So let's dive a little deeper into our legislative branch. In Richmond, our General Assembly makes our state laws. It's broken into two parts. We have the Senate, made up of 40 senators, each representing a different area of Virginia. And then we have the House of Delegates, which has 100 representatives, each representing a different area of Virginia. This is called a bicameral house, meaning it has two houses. Both groups are going to meet with the people they represent to understand their needs. That's why they're elected, to represent the people who voted for them and to represent their interests. They also decide how to spend the state budget. Some of that money comes to our public schools. Lastly, they are responsible for writing new laws or amending old ones. Once the legislative branch has written a law, it is going to go to the head of the executive branch, our governor, who approves the laws written and passed by the General Assembly. But he doesn't have to approve them. This is his check and balance. He is able to veto a law and send it back to the General Assembly where they can change it and send it back to him. They can get rid of it altogether, or they can vote to override his veto. Another responsibility of the executive branch is to ensure that laws are carried out or followed. The governor appoints experts to give him advice on different subjects. This is called his cabinet. Members of his cabinet include experts on education, health, public safety, transportation, and much more. The governor is one of the most important people in the state and is elected by the people, just like our senators and representatives. The governor is to the state government as the president is to the federal government. Both of them are heads of their level of government. The governor serves a 4-year term, and Virginia has had many famous governors. Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, and L. Douglas Wilder are all famous Virginians that we have studied who were also governors of Virginia. Our current governor, pictured here, is Dr. Ralph Northam, who was a medical doctor before becoming elected to state government. Lastly, Virginia's judicial branch is Virginia's court system, and it applies the law. People accused of a crime face a judge and sometimes a jury, depending on what the crime is. The courts also decide if a law is constitutional. Pictured here is our Supreme Court of Virginia. So we have Justice Arthur Kelsey, Justice Elizabeth McClanahan, Justice Bernard Goodwin, Justice Donald Lemons, who is the Chief Justice, which means that he's the head of the Supreme Court, Justice William Mims, Justice Cleo Powell, and Justice Stephen McCulloch. Our court system can seem a little bit complicated. We look at a lot of Supreme Court cases, but they don't start there. Any court case is going to start in either district court or family court here locally. Once it has been decided at that first level, the losing party has the opportunity to appeal, which means to say, I don't think this is the right judgment. I want another case. And if it's approved, it will move to the next level. So once it has been tried at the district or family court, it would move on to circuit court, then to the Court of Appeals, and then finally the Supreme Court if they decide to hear it. That's the decision of the Supreme Court. They don't have to hear cases, and generally they only hear cases where they're looking at whether a law is constitutional or not. They're not taking any old case. So as I was saying, if a person is unhappy with the result of their trial, they can appeal. In Virginia, the final decision can end up at the Supreme Court with 7 judges. The Chief Justice is the leader. Pictured here is the Honorable Donald Lemons, Chief Justice.